friends, come on in. The stew is still strong. We've got a special guest today. Back here with us is Sir Matt, the Bud Knight from Bend the Knee. How's it going, man? What is happening?
Hey, man, it's going good. You know, we've been watching the Acolyte this season, and you and I have been texting each other, right, all season long, just like, ooh, I don't know, man. You know, I don't know. Talked about it a couple weeks ago. We're just like, all right, we need to do a breakdown of this because there, you know,
it's controversial.
There's controversial. The internet might be right. In some cases, I think the internet's a little wrong. Actually, there's some redeeming qualities I think I found with this thing. But you know, hey, it's controversial to talk about. People are being censored out there. Star Wars Theory, Angry Joe Show, even some clips I posted from our last thing mysteriously got taken down on TikTok. Don't know what was going on there. They've since been reinstated. I had to go through an appeal process. And it was just me and you saying we didn't like old episode 3. The power of one, the power of 2, the power of, you know, TikTok to disable my monetization.
Dude, exactly. What was up with that? I mean, after you said that, I went and looked around at a couple other different content creators, specifically people who were, you know, just giving some criticism, whether it was fair or not, whatever. Anybody who was criticizing it seemed to be their views were down. Some sort of censorship was happening. I don't know if that's just maybe people, you could say, well, people don't want to feed into that or it wasn't attractive to the viewer, but I freaking doubt it. I don't know, something about it, because everyone was reporting it across the board and it felt like people were being censored. So
hey, I think they were, man. I mean, the one I posted, one of the ones I posted a couple clips for the one you and I had one on TikTok. You got like 70,000 views, and they were all positive. I mean, positive of us comments.
Yeah.
And you know, and then mysteriously it got taken out. At first, I saw Star Wars Theories go down.
Sure.
It's like, all right, well, I mean, he's the big guy. I could definitely see Disney pulling some strings to knock his thing down, but little creators like us, I was like, well, maybe there is something going on here.
Who freaking is the dark side working? And it's not the dark side we're used to either, by the way. This is a new regime of dark side we're talking about now. But anyway, dude, I do have a big question before we get going, though. I really honestly want to know, what is it like to cover a TV show that people like, that's well produced, getting good reviews, that's blowing up, lots of views? What is it like to cover a show like that?
Hey, it is great. House of the Dragon season 2 is fantastic. You know, these last 2 episodes have been a little slow, but episode 4 was so big that you have to have some breathing room, right, before you gear up towards the end of the season. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It is sick. I know. It's, you know, you and I used to cover The Mandalorian, and it was just like the same thing. Everyone's super hyped, super pumped about all the things that are happening. You and I didn't have a chance to talk about the Ahsoka show when it was out, but, you know, there's obviously a lot of positivity, you know, towards that show as well. And, you know, season 3 of The Mandalorian, Andor, a lot of that stuff. So there are Star Wars shows out there and things that have existed that have been hyped. It just feels like this one is kind of pulling people down a little bit.
Well, dude, and
that's as well as maybe Bad Batch, real quick. Maybe Bad Batch season 3 was kind of it's kind of mid.
Mid. You know, that's the thing, though, is that I'm glad you brought those up, because it's not, you know, I was actually over on Bend the Knee, by the way, and we were talking on that episode. We did some Patreon stuff over there, different things, and it was so funny because it hit me at the end. You were like, dude, what's it like to cover one of the worst TV shows out there? And that just got me. I was like, dude, man, he's so right, because it feels so crazy, you know. Anytime I even mention Acolyte, like in a short that I do or a poll or anything, people are just boom, they're in there just downvoting it, like they hate it. It is so I mean, there were problems with all the shows that you mentioned. Every show has its problem or could have some pacing issues or different things, but across the board, this show seems like it is just triggering people left and right. So, I mean, I don't know. It just was like weird to kind of say, like, to start covering this show and knowing that, like, I've covered other shows and we've covered them, you know, together, and they've been hyped, they've been ups and downs. But God, dude, I had a comment the other day on a video that was just like, you know, this show, they were trying to explain how much they didn't like it. And they basically said, like, look, Obi-Wan Kenobi was bad. And I actually personally, Matt knows, I liked Obi-Wan because I'm a big fan of Obi-Wan. But they're like, Obi-Wan was bad. This is something worse. And I was like, yeah, okay. They're like, this is really bad. And Now, I also have people who are coming out kind of saying like people are overreacting to this, and it could be. I've had to kind of step back and say maybe there has been some overreaction, even on my part. I mean, part of it is, dude, to cut right to it. I'm going to ask you your big thoughts here on the finale and just some bigger takeaways or whatever. We're going to go over the top 10 biggest controversies here as well too in just a second. But one of the things is just the lack of inspiration, just the lack of inspiring characters. I finally had to like figure out what is it that I really don't like. And it's just like I don't look up to any of these people, dude. None of these,
Yeah.
they're all just like they're kind of they either all die or they just are not characters that are that classic sort of I don't hero arc journey, you know, unless you're talking about May and Osha, which then I'm with everybody else. I'm out on that. I don't think that
Yeah.
they're really good characters to get behind. So it's just been kind of lackluster. And
Yeah, I think structurally the show in some ways it tries to do too much actually, and it sort of hurts itself. And you and I actually talked last time about this, and maybe we'll get through our list and stuff. Maybe we could talk about a potential season 2, or we
yeah,
could do another episode or something like about that on it, because I do actually think there are some things they could do with a season 2 to help improve this show if it gets it, which is actually the question right now, because
yeah,
all the interviews and everything are like if the show gets a season 2, which Disney might just be like no.
right.
um
Yep.
but yeah, I mean, they tried to do too much, and even rewatching the finale again today, like Saul's death didn't feel as powerful because it's framed where there's so much else going on at the same time,
Yeah.
right? Like you have Osha and May standing there, and then you get the big change with the lightsaber, and and there's so much going on there that his death actually doesn't feel like the important part of that scene. And then later, when Vanestra comes in and investigates it, and then sort of tells the story about him, about, well, actually he was a traitor, like you don't feel his loss as much, and you don't feel his the story that's created about it. It doesn't hit the way it should,
Yeah.
because you're like dealing with all this stuff. And hold on, did we just see Plagueis? And now we're
Right.
going to see Yoda. There's just so much going on that a lot of the moments that are supposed to hit don't, because I think they did too much this season.
Yeah. 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 No, that's actually probably, yeah, to get right to the core of some of the issues with the overall like structure of it. I mean, for example, a friend of ours, Josh Carey, actually wrote in and said the big thing was it should have been like a big movie. It should have been like a, 2.5 hour movie or just longer episodes, or tell your story and pace it a little bit better, because some things just didn't seem believable. And or they were, one moment was, like you said, overshadowing another moment, and so it lost all of its oomph, and so that was what's kind of sucked. I think also all of the moments of like the decision making just didn't feel believable. One minute they're deciding like the twins are doing this, the next minute they're like, no, we're doing this, and there's no time in between to process what the heck they're doing. No time to process anybody's death or anything either. Too, all these
Right.
freaking
And then
died.
their character arcs like flip,
Right,
and then they wipe
fast,
the mind at the end, and it's like, dude, like there's
fast.
what is like, there's so much stuff happening in this season that it's so incredibly easy to get lost when you're trying to, as a new viewer. I would imagine that casual viewers are like, what is even happening here?
Right.
Because for them, a lot of it's like, hold on, like we're in an era in which the Jedi are, this is before the prequels.
Yeah.
All the Jedi are back and everything, and the Sith are supposed to be this rising force, which could have simply been a story on its own.
Yeah.
Right? If that were just the story, which is kind of what we thought it was going to be. Like when we had heard about the Acolyte and everything, we thought, oh, it's going to be a Sith during the time of the High Republic. And maybe we literally thought it could be Plagueis. Like that could be the whole story.
For sure. Yep.
Then you
And
introduce, now we're going to have Vergence in the Force, and the Jedi are evil, and these two twins, and you add in their story while one of them is becoming a Sith and the other wanted to be a Jedi, but now she becomes a Sith, and
dude.
it's like space assassins, and we're going to create the Force, and Vergences, and Yoda's here, and
Oh my god,
Plagueis, and it's like, dude, and what is going on?
what's going on? Yeah.
They did way too much, and I
Yeah,
think
it was ambitious. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's way too ambitious, and it's just things get lost, and that's what everyone is kind of saying, is that it has good bones, right? I think that's the structure and everything is there. There's a lot of potential for it, but it's just too quick, too much, too fast. Slap it in, and sort of it. I can't really even put my finger on exactly what it is. You know, some people are like, well, the acting's really bad, or the writing is not great, or it's this or it's that. It's like kind of a combination of like all of those things being kind of mediocre and being too much and too quick. And so therefore it does, like, there are good actors in this, right? There are really good actors doing a good job. But dude, their lines fall flat when they're so short, or the dialogue's just written and it's kind of flat. There's no story
Yeah.
behind those characters. And so it's just hard to get behind it. My biggest thing was believability. Like, it was really just hard to believe that Soul would do that Vanessa would do this, or that really more the twins, that the twins would make those decisions so quickly, so rapidly. And then I just kind of started to not
Yeah.
believe it. And that's sucks. So
Yeah, and I actually will give Amanda Stout, how do you say it?
Amandla. Yep.
Amandla, yeah,
Yep.
Stanberg, yeah. I actually will give her a little more credit because we talked about this actually a little bit when we were doing our episode 3 review, and people were just super hating on her when this first came out, and I was kind of like, well, a lot of it I'm sure might be directing choices, and then it's also incredibly difficult to play 2 characters
Right.
in a show, because then even as an actor, you are like, well, I need to play this one like more aggressive and this one less aggressive to you have the difference between the two.
Right.
And I don't know that it was necessarily like her acting performance, right? That I think some of it's just like directing and honestly like
Yeah.
the way you frame characters and stuff like that. And it just it didn't blend well. But I have a feeling like if you were to let her play either one of those characters without trying to force them on the screen, I kind of feel like I
Yeah.
kind of feel like both performances would have come across better.
Right, yeah. And again, that kind of goes back to our idea of there being too much on the screen at once. You know, doing the twins and having an actress do all of those things and carry all those different emotions and trying to do all of that together, it just seemed like a lot. And maybe it was a lot for her. Like you said, the directing, there was a lot of things to keep track of in this show. And
Yeah.
that was sort of the problem. And that's where some fans were sort of like, some things are not kind of adding up, which will lead us into our controversies here. I'm just going to take us into our 10
Yeah, let's
biggest
do it.
controversies. So this is just a Screen Rant article I found, and it listed off some of the 10 biggest controversies from season 1. And at number 10, we have fans thought Ki-Adi-Mundi's birthday had been retconned. And actually, as I was reading this article, it kind of was basically trying to take some of these controversies and frame them like, hey, actually, that wasn't that big of a deal. But I still have a little bit of a beef with the whole Ki-Adi-Mundi thing. So, I mean, Matt, my question was going to be to open the whole podcast. How old is Ki-Adi-Mundi actually? And I know that doesn't truly matter, but it's like, they go on to kind of say that he never had an age in canon, and he really, he could be as old as the showrunners or the people need him to be. But it's like, well, who else is 100, 200, 300 years old that was on the council that maybe we don't know about, that is still kind of around? And just because it wasn't like solidified there, it does seem just sort of it. There is you could have picked any other Jedi Council member to increase their age. It would have worked just the same. I'm not hugely disappointed. Like, I'm not like, oh my god, it's absolutely crazy and it's whatever. It's really it's less about the age, and you've heard this before too. It's less about the age. It's more about the idea that he actually is the guy who says the famous
Right.
line from Phantom Menace. And so, but still, why even go there? If you just want to throw a cameo, or you just want to throw somebody in there, throw Stacey Teen, put Plo Koon, for example, throw him in there. That's fine.
Right.
Why throw him in there? And really, how old is he? And that's then because you could go on and on with that. Like, who all is sitting on the council, and could we just extend everybody's age a little bit? Make everybody a
Yeah.
little bit older.
Well,
So,
and I yeah, exactly. I'm with you. And the point is that it sort of creates continuity errors
yeah,
in
exactly.
that Luke, right? He's the one who says, well, the Sith have been gone for a generation. Well, clearly now there are Sith and there's things going on too, right?
Yeah.
And even if you want to look at it like, say, Yoda, I don't know if this is one of the points on the list, but I saw people making the argument that's like, hold on a second. So they sort of like shield this thing from Yoda so that he doesn't know about it. But in episode 2, Yoda can force sense Anakin having like distraught thoughts all the way on Tatooine, right? About the death of his mother. Yeah. And how would Yoda not know that all of this stuff is going on when Saul dies or when any of these other people die? So that's another
That's a good point. I haven't heard many people bring that up. So the fact that Yoda is able to sense and have those, like, okay, the classic one is Obi-Wan in episode 4. He felt a great disturbance in the Force. Now, yes, it was Alderaan blowing up, but throughout like Star Wars, you see many times where on a smaller scale, that was just, as you mentioned in episode 2, Yoda and Anakin, and he can feel that he's troubled. And he can even hear Qui-Gon's voice calling out and like, no, Anakin, no, right?
Yeah.
And so how is it that Yoda sitting here in meditation doesn't realize that? I mean, I think I counted there's like 12 or 13, maybe. I mean, it could have been 12 or 13, 14 Jedi killed. You know, it's like this is a lot of
How do we not
Jedi
know?
killed in a matter of 2 to 3 days. How is that not a disturbance in the Force? How,
Yeah.
why do we need Vanestra to go inform like the Grand Master Jedi have been killed? I mean, the Senate freaking knows, Matt. Like the Senate knows. It just does. It's not believable.
Right.
So,
And here they're saying, well, okay, maybe it wasn't canon, his birthday, so that's why he can be older and whatever. But what is canon is the new High Republic stuff, right? And
right.
think about this real quick. I want to kind of connect these two. You and I read whatever the first High Republic book was, Light of the Jedi or something like that.
Yeah,
is what
yeah,
it
yeah.
was.
You're right.
Yep. And remember, the space station is like falling, and what is it? God, I'm blanking on
Avar
her name.
Chris.
Avar Chris calls upon all the Jedi, right, to help out,
Yep.
do this stuff. And Yoda, like she can specifically feel Yoda joining the Force. He can join the Force from across the galaxy to help use the Force across the galaxy to help like stop this space station. And he can't sense Jedi Master Saul and all these other people dying. I mean, it doesn't
it doesn't make sense, and it's hard, yeah. And I get people are like, well, that's the books or this is the nah, dude. Like that's, I don't know, man. Like it is a little bit bothersome that it just doesn't feel consistent.
It doesn't feel,
right. It feels
it doesn't right. It doesn't feel connected. It doesn't feel it doesn't feel like it has continuity. I mean, the same thing has happened in Marvel too, right? Like in what is it, in Eternals, when they stop the thing that's like rising up out of the earth, and now there's like a continent size like rope, and they've never addressed it once.
No,
they've never addressed it once. It's like, what? Like,
right. Yeah. It's weird. When you make something, it needs to kind of feed and fit in. Okay. Before I get back to the list, here's probably the biggest thing. I probably should have did this before, but I'm going to do it now. All right. The problem that people have with the Ki-Adi-Mundi situation is that when you watched Phantom Menace, when you and I went and saw it, and we walked away from that theater, and even after we watched episode 1, 2, and 3, we went back and watched the first movie, Phantom Menace, and we said, okay, here's what the Jedi believe. They do not believe that the Sith have been around. They believe that they've been like extinct. And you can bring up all these things in books and lore or whatever, based upon what Disney has said is canon in that movie. Our takeaway was that is what they believed. You know, so now you are actually writing, you're coming in with this other idea, or you're creating something that is trying to alter really what our characters were actually thinking in that movie. Do you know what I'm saying? Like for example, when Qui-Gon first says something about, that he believed he encountered the Sith, Ki-Adi says his line, but Mace Windu also says, I don't really think so. And Yoda's like, oh, difficult to see and all this kind of stuff, right? So you're basically telling me now, after watching The Acolyte, Yoda knew. Kind of. I mean, you're alluding to the idea that Yoda knew. And as Wet and I just mentioned, like the idea that he couldn't sense a disturbance in the Force, and that the Senate knows about these murders, and like, it's not going to be, I don't know. I feel like you can't tell this sort of lie about Soul and like the Jedi are going to believe it. That's another big controversy, which is like, why does everybody just believe this lie? It's totally not believable. But it just bothers me, I guess, that it is sort of the idea that the Acolyte is dictating to those characters. Here's another example real quick before we get back to the list. They're now saying Osha and May are the reason. They're now saying they're the reason that Yoda and everybody were kind of like, hey, actually, we don't think, he's too old to be trained. Instead of it just being their knowledge and expertise and like just it being a standalone thing, it feels like this thing is the thing that is dictating and determining the decision making that happened in that movie. And so you're like, well, that seems to be kind of like almost like it's just pushing in on something of this narrative to the first movie that it's unnecessary, and it feels kind of, I don't know. That's just my own
problem
thoughts.
with that, though. The problem with that, though, is that if that was the only case, right? So even the Acolyte can't even get it right, because if they're saying, oh, this is the case, right? The problem is if Anakin was the only Jedi in between the Acolyte and the prequels that
Yeah.
was too old to train, that they allowed to train,
Yeah.
that would be okay. But what does Qui-Gon say to Obi-Wan in
Yeah.
episode 1? Obi-Wan was also too old to train.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not like there haven't
Yeah.
been other Jedi who have been too old to train. So
Right.
even that, you can't make, like, how do you make that argument?
Right. That's what it's the thing is that they're trying to sort of like, this is the thing that dictates to episode 1, and that's what it feels like, I think, for some people. And some people would say, well, that's not really what they're doing, but it does seem like that. And from interviews with the showrunner, it seems like that's sort of the idea. I actually think she specifically was talking about Ocean May and saying, well, this is the reason, this will be the reason that Yoda and those guys make that decision. It's like, no, Yoda and those guys made that decision based on years of experience. Your show and your movie did not dictate how they made their decisions. You know what I'm saying? I think that's what's really ticking people off, and I kind of totally get that. That's just not necessary. It's fine to make it fit. It's fine to make it fit together, but to have one thing dictate to the other that was already there beforehand, it's just kind of, I don't know, it just feels pushy. It feels, it feels like it's just too much, went too far. Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Moving on here, just going through these real quickly. Some of these are going to be like quickly, like, that's not the case, but the Acolyte. So number 9 here, point number 9 was the Acolyte was initially review bombed, and I don't know if you've seen, with Rotten Tomatoes, and basically that the fans came out there and just went nuts. I got to say, at least I'm sure that there were people that did that, right? I'm sure that people came out and did just say, all right, I'm just going to go in and tank the show because they initially didn't like it. But in episode 1 of the Acolyte, there's some issues in terms of, there's already some issues with like Indara being killed. There, you could already have some problem with the series. I still think you need to let it run out and do its thing, and that review can change over time, right? If you're like, hey, this ended up being really good, you can go back and kind of modify your review. But it was like, initially, the timing on episode 1 was so awkward. I think I have a comment in here. Let me read it to you real quick. Just in the first episode, the Jedi tracked down Osha in one day. The murder happened last night. They don't take her to Coruscant themselves. They put her in a prison ship with a single guard. That then crashes. The prisoners are recaptured and taken to Coruscant, where they're interrogated, and the same Jedi from earlier fly back to find her again, all before she woke up. And you're like, okay, that's sort of you could review episode 1 alone and say, a lot of this stuff just feels that's weird. It's not making sense in terms of just the pacing and the storytelling. So, but I mean, it may have been, it does look like there was a lot of people who, are the fandom is pretty huge. But I don't know, man. What do you think about that? What do you think in terms like, was it review bombed? Was it not? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this last time too, and is that, Disney often says, oh, they're review bombing their show, and we said, well, maybe the show just sucks. Right. I mean, but that can still be part of it. And you can also still receive review bombs, whether people think it's fun to go and hate on a show, or they don't like it because it's woke, or, whatever. But, at the end of the day, I mean, the review bombing is deserved and also sometimes undeserved. So I mean, right, it's like, you're gonna get review bombed if your show sucks, but you will also get it, on top of it if people don't like. I mean, people only review bomb it because they don't like it for some reason.
Yeah. And again, leading into it, there was a lot of controversy to start, and then they went and watched the first episode and were like, okay. And then the reviews kept pouring in throughout the season. So it's pretty bad.
And people are like, oh, it's Star Wars shows. Well, why didn't Ahsoka get review bombed? Why didn't Rogue One get review bombed?
Exactly.
They had strong female lead characters too.
Yep, for sure. I know it's not that one single thing or that one single issue. It really is. And actually, everything you and I have talked about so far has been continuity. It's been pacing. It's been sort of cramming too much into one show. And so it hasn't been any of those big hot trigger, things with actors or diversity or wokeness. It's been none of that. That's not what we're talking about at all.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, if I read the story, I would be like, I don't like this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. So, and that's probably, and a lot of people, that's okay. They come out and say, hey, it's not great. It just is what it is. Here's one that we were talking about earlier, and I think we're going to bring it back here full scale. So, number 8, it was originally thought that the Acolyte Sith would break canon. And I'm going to read a little bit more of this. So, the article goes on to say that the Sith had not been seen for 1,000 years before the Phantom Menace. Now, before the Acolyte began, and even well into the season, there was a genuine fear that the show would break the established Star Wars canon. This is because the show features the Stranger, a character whose status as a Sith was and really still is up for debate. No matter what happened throughout the course of the show, knowledge of his existence would have to be somehow hidden from the Jedi in order to preserve their surprise at the discovery of Darth Maul in Episode 1. I'll go ahead and say it. They're actually looking at, I think it was, so it's May. They're looking at May in Episode 2 or something, where they're looking at the attack and her killing Master Indara. They're analyzing this. They're already alluding to, could this be a dark Jedi? Could this be some fallen individual? And everyone's sort of saying at the end of the series, Venestra goes and says, look, it was all Master Soul, right? He did it. And she's telling the senators this, right? She's telling the senators, trust me, it was Master Soul. He fell. This is an issue. The problem I have with that is Master Soul was there standing next to Ki-Adi-Mundi, like actually talking about what was going on about a murder for like Master Indara. So Ki-Adi-Mundi, if he hears that Venestra lied to all of the Senate, is going to be like, that doesn't make sense. Why did she? I saw Master Soul right here. He wasn't there for her murder. He wasn't. There were other Jedi that witnessed that, like, he has an alibi in 2 of the murders from other Jedi who saw him in the room. So the lie only sticks really with the senators, and it doesn't stick with the Jedi. And then now she's actually going in and telling Master Yoda, we have a problem. You don't think the other Jedi are going to sense this? Like, how can you cover that up?
Right. And we know how Ki-Adi-Mundi feels about Wookiees. So, I mean, with Kelnaka, I mean, he's got to, he's
concerned, right?
Too. Right.
He's concerned. Oh man, he'll definitely be concerned about that. Jeezy cow, what about the droid attack on the Wookiees, man? Oh my god. So yeah, I just don't. I did a short actually the other day where it was like about Ki-Adi's special power in Legends. Was he could actually sense the dark side. He actually had the power to sense the dark side. It was just something on a dumb, video game or whatever, but I thought it was kind of hilarious. And I thought, the Jedi, just as we were talking about with Master Yoda, they have more perception than this. And Venestra is not that good of a liar. So clearly something is being covered up here. And to think that the Jedi don't know it on a pretty, significant scale is wrong, especially when you have Ki-Adi-Mundi in the room there. And really the major problem here is going to be, I actually truly believe that later on, whether it does get a season 2 or not, there's already enough here that smells funny, that is suggestive that he knew and was actively investigating this, and probably was just lying during Episode 1. If you actually said that he was lying during Episode 1, if your show starts to change what we perceive to be the truth there, and what maybe George Lucas was saying that the Jedi did or didn't believe in Episode 1, if you change that, then that's a problem. That's where you're really starting to kind of, again, dictate and alter and upend lore and canon. So
it hurts the overall series. It's one of the biggest problems with the sequels in general, is that it sort of tarnishes 4, 5, and 6. Right. If the whole deal of the original Star Wars trilogy is Darth Vader Luke turning him back to the light side and him going out by defeating Palpatine, and then you decide, well, somehow Palpatine comes back, then it makes that moment not feel as powerful.
Exactly. It does. You're right. It actually, so it steals essentially the thunder of the Sith in terms of they were able to keep a secret for this long, when really it's like, actually they didn't. Actually we kind of knew about it and we kind of lied and just covered it up. And it's like, actually the thunder there was like, I mean, this whole moment where Darth Maul says to Darth Sidious, like, finally we can reveal ourselves to the Jedi. And it's like, well, that doesn't really feel as significant if you already did reveal yourself to the Jedi. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's the same. Yeah, exactly what you're saying with Palpatine and Vader. It just, I don't know, man. And now I get, people are saying, well, look, she's blaming all of the murders on soul, and it's just not a good lie. It's my whole problem with the whole series is it's not believable.
Right.
And even the senators are going to be like, she already showed us that she tried to keep it from the Senate. She tried to keep the truth and the fact that there were murders and an investigation away from the Senate. But guess what? The Senate figured it out. And so, okay, you've already shown us once that the Senate can figure out what you're trying to, brush under the rug. Why wouldn't they be able to figure it out now? I mean, just go
Yeah.
interview Kiadi Mundi and bring him in and, and say, hey, so wait, she said that he was responsible for killing Master Andara. And some people might be like, Ez, you're taking it too literal. She didn't actually say that. She said he was responsible. And it just like, what was he doing? Was he controlling? Did he have the power to control his apprentice to send her to go kill Master Andara? Like, there's just too many loose ends, and it just it's not
Doesn't work.
believable. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
well, I mean, there's more about it because at some point we'll talk about who I think is the worst character ever created in Star Wars history. Okay.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Let's zip through. A couple of these are going to be like, yeah. Oh, I can't wait for that one. So a couple of these are pretty quick. Just number 7 here. The Acolyte was considered woke for its diversity.
We kind of talked about that with rebombing.
Yeah, we've already talked about that, and it's like, I maybe there are some people out there who think that. I really, again, don't. That's been a reoccurring theme, actually, that people keep saying that for every new Star Wars product that comes out, because they keep putting in, a lot of diverse characters and a lot of these different things, and they keep saying, people are angry because of that. I don't really see a lot of people. I could be wrong. I'm just not in those.
I don't
waters,
know.
I guess, but
other shows have it, but somehow they're able to pull it off. Remember, you and I cover. Go back to the thing. Remember, everybody in House of the Dragon, right? Which is like on the other side of this whole spectrum. Everybody loves it. It's main character. Which there is a little bit of controversy this week because it's like something happens that doesn't happen in the books, right? But the main character, Rhaenyra Targaryen, played by Emma Darcy, who is they, she, goes by they, plays a character she. First of all, amazing acting performance, killing it this season, right? And according to a big IGN poll, is everybody's second favorite character of the whole deal, right? So you have like that, and then. You have and then in that show also there was some controversy by some very small people, right, in the fandom that didn't like that the Valerians, right, Corlys Valerian and all that stuff in the books, they're white, they switched to black. Actually makes way more sense given the context of the story that they're going for, right? So like nobody is calling House of the Dragon woke. Just because it's good.
It's good. It's a good show.
Yeah. And like The Boys also had like people just like it, even though it like sort of spits in the face of like it sort of is like, we're gonna make fun of everybody, right? We're gonna make fun of like woke culture, we're gonna make fun of this and all this other stuff. In fact, actually there's I don't know if you've watched The Boys that much.
Couple seasons,
yeah, a couple seasons. Yeah, exactly. So this season they have a character, Firecracker, right, who was actually played by a woman who identifies as, I don't know all of that, so I don't want to misgender or label whatever. That's her deal. And she's like, I'm doing it for fun. Like, and she's playing a character who's like on the polar opposite side of the spectrum. So I mean, Star Wars itself does have a thing where it's immediately just woke. Everyone just calls Disney woke. There's the South Park joke a while back. But they made the whole deal about Kathleen Kennedy and stuff like that. But it's, I mean, certainly a lot of the comments they make in the media and stuff don't help it. All right. I mean, that certainly doesn't help it.
No, and even people who are, you look at some of those people who are doing the interviewing of those actors and the creators, they seem to also want to charge up that conversation, and you just don't see it in other productions, and you like the ones that you just mentioned, and they're just knocking out, talking about they're looking to win awards, right? They have award-winning shows. They're not playing down here in this whole like I don't know, like going back and forth in these little debates about whether we have a female lead or what. No, like they're just going out, doing their thing, creating awesome content and a good product, and then moving on. I mean, it's just, and it, I don't know, it sells, and it's just, people love it. So that's a problem. I think the fact that people keep going back to this over and over, it's just, I don't know. It's kind of, it's kind of sad to see. I don't see it. Again, I don't wait around in those social media cesspools where people are talking like that. So whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Number 6, though, here we go. So this is moving on. This one is a good one to kind of talk about. So viewers disagreed with Anakin's origins being stolen. So some people kind of one of the controversies here is that Anakin's origin story is stolen by the twins. And I think we've all, you know, I think that's not actually what the problem was with folks. I think the problem was more that it seems like Darth Plagueis is learning about the creation of these twins, and again, that's speculation. We actually don't know. Darth Plagueis could have been the one who fed the information to Mother Anastasia and taught her how to create the twins. We have no clue. But I get where people originally were sort of like, wait, what are they kind of saying here? They're saying that these kids were created by the Force, and why wasn't there any speculation that maybe they were the chosen one, right? Kind of thing back in the day. So I don't know. I don't really see a big, I mean, I do kind of see a controversy around it in terms of just that they're created by the Force, but I don't think they're not created in the same way, right? The Force is what just creates Anakin. This was the manipulation of Mother Anastasia with Mother Coral, and it seems to be dark in nature. I don't know. I don't know it was necessary. You know, I don't think that it was actually necessary. And I get she's trying to more set up, I think, how Plagueis learns about this power. I'm speculating there. And really saying that he was watching and witnessing this, and he heard about how May and Osha were created. Therefore, that intrigues him to go into manipulating midichlorians and all this kind of stuff. And it's almost like now the witches have discovered something very interesting and neat, and that is inspiring Plagueis, and people are upset about that because it's like, no, that kind of takes away from Plagueis just being naturally interested in it, and his character was just obsessed with it. And it would be like Leslie Headland is saying, hey, well, the reason Plagueis was obsessed with it was because of my witches. And I think that's maybe where people are getting kind of upset with the whole creation story there a little bit. Because I don't think it's the same as Anakin. It's just weird. It's actually really hard to understand, to be honest with you. They're the same person split in 2 bodies or whatever. And like, how does all of that work? And it's just this big question mark that we're going to answer in a season 2 that we might or might not get.
And it's different. And the problem with it is, and I'll come back to the Anakin thing here, but just on the idea that they're a virgins, it's one person split into 2. Now you've added another layer of things that's even more awkward, because in episode 9, we were told about, oh, well, actually, or not episode, the sequels in general, but in really more 8 and 9. Well, Rey and Kylo Ren are actually a Force dyad. So that's like 2 people who have a very special connection. So are these people a Force dyad, or they're Force? It's a Force virgin. So it's like another layer. I would have just made I don't know. I guess you could have just made it a Force dyad. It's like, now it's like, hold on. Now we're adding just more and more layers on top of this thing. So just that in itself is
confusing,
awkward. Yeah. I do kind of agree that I think it kind of hurts Anakin's origin a little bit. They haven't, of course, gone down the full route of Plagueis is the one who creates Anakin. The Force, we could still leave it open. They could still leave it open to where the Force creates Anakin. But Plagueis was learning about it, and then Palpatine obviously gets it from him, and then Palpatine tells it to Anakin, which causes him to think maybe that's how I could save Padme, and it doesn't work. And then Palpatine uses that to go down his route. They could still leave that, and it would be intact. I've always never hoped that Plagueis was the one who ultimately created Anakin.
Right. No.
That is the other cool way to go, which then it's like, okay, then maybe Palpatine knows about it, which is why he creates some things, because he knows it will lead to Anakin. So that is a cool way to go. But I've always preferred the whole deal be that Anakin was just naturally created by the Force, is the chosen one, and does bring balance to the Force, even though him bringing balance to the Force is a little bit dark.
Yeah, for sure. I think that has to stay intact, and I that's how I believe as well too, right? That he's the chosen one, created by the Force, and if they alter that, I think people will absolutely lose their minds. They've not, like you said, they've not quite gone that far, but it makes you kind of wonder: are they going to keep a lot of the stuff that was in the Darth Plagueis book intact? Because they don't have to. I mean, and that's where we start to kind of learn about what Plagueis's fascinations were with the Force and his training of Sidious. It actually seems like in the season 2, Leslie Headland wants to kind of build out Plagueis's character and maybe lead into because I think she said in an interview that Chimere and Osha, their story is tragic because essentially we know they don't make it, or that they're
Right.
killed, or that they won't become, you know, carry on, and that we know that Sidious is going to end up being there later or whatever. And so you're like, she's already thought through all of that, and is really going to go into developing Darth Plagueis. And yeah, people have their issues with that. She could do a great job. She could actually go out there and knock it out of the park, but it's a very delicate thing, and it does be done correctly. And already it seems like there is some stuff that is stepping on things that were
Yeah.
created
Do you think,
before.
and we can
So
talk a little bit about it here. Do you think the show's going to get a season 2?
yeah, you know, I think it actually is going to get a season 2, because at first I was like, nah, there's no way. It's just got the reviews are bad, all these different things, blah blah. But I think they took a character that's they gosh, they took a step forward that they can't take back.
Take
If
back.
that makes, yeah, when you brought Plagueis onto the screen and you said, we're going to bring him on. We're also going to show Yoda and inform him of this situation. And we're going to show you the Sith and show you that the Jedi are semi close to this. And we're going to bring back we're going to create twins with the Force, which is a big freaking deal. And then not finish out that story and tell us more about it. That will, I don't know. A lot of people don't want it, but I feel like you can't go back now. You kind of have to. And actually, that might be the other thing that kind of ticks people off, is the way that it was written. I made a short the other day that said that season 2 was necessary. Well, it's necessary because, you know, you didn't finish the story. You actually designed it in a way that made yourself more necessary to come back for season 2. So,
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
I agree. And then the problem with it is, I mean, the problem that the Acolyte has going forward and trying to create a season 2, when you look at those review bombs, man, whether it's just fans doing it or not, I mean,
Yeah.
like the look at, I mean, just look at the fallout from the sequels, right? Like
Oh,
Daisy
yeah.
Ridley, I mean, look how long it took John Boyega to get Daisy Ridley back. John Boyega's like, I don't even want to do it.
Yep.
So you will, even whether it's just like, oh, fans being overcritical and the show is still successful or not, you will begin to see actors and actresses being like, I'm good. I don't want to
I'm
be
good.
part of it.
Yeah.
Because it's just not worth it. Right. Like we've
Right.
seen this in other fandoms too. You know, like with some of, like, I mean, obviously with like the Spider-Man movies, like the Morbius and stuff like that, people are like, I mean, those movies just sucked, obviously, but it's just like, hey, I don't even, you see some people step out of their normal thing into a superhero role, and it just goes bad, and they're like, nope, I'm good. I don't even want to be part of like that type of a thing again.
Right. Well, yeah, I have
Like it happened here
classic
too,
example here.
people are
So,
like, I don't even want to be in Star Wars. It's not worth it.
right. Well, here's an example. Rings of Power season 1 was so controversial and had so many different issues. Joseph Maul, who is actually in Game of Thrones, right? He plays Adar in that. He's not coming back. He basically stepped out and said, I'm good. Now, was
Yeah.
that there's no rhyme or reason for it. People don't know if it was personal or what the deal was. But he's just like, I'm out. It got a lot of hate, and he bounced. So yeah, you wouldn't want to see that for these actors. And that is why you want to protect your brand. You actually do want to make sure that your brand is good, not just be willy-nilly about going out there and just doing, hey, whatever, like, we're not going to really plan this out, think it through. The sequels were a fumble. And the crazy thing is, you have people, and I see them every day on the comments and going through stuff, who are like, I would rather say Rey is a Skywalker than go back and watch
Okay.
Acolyte season 1. So you got a problem here, people. Like, this
It did the sequels. The best thing about the Acolyte is it made the sequels watchable again.
Right.
It's like, all right, well, it's not as bad as the Acolyte, which is, you know, the same thing that the sequels did for the prequels, right? Which a lot of people,
right,
because a lot of the
right.
old guard was like, oh, the prequels, they suck.
Oh,
Then the sequels came out, they're like, well, maybe the prequels aren't as bad,
yeah,
right? You know,
right,
it's
exactly,
kind of the same thing.
exactly. Yeah, it's wild, man. I think they're probably, I don't know, again, like, they're probably gonna go for a season 2, but that is probably all they would do. Don't you think? They would just say, finish the story. You, like, go ahead and do the
I
thing. I don't
mean,
know if they keep going with it.
structurally, I will say, if they were to listen to like the fan criticisms and everything, and, you know, maybe, 'cause the biggest problem with the show, outside of all of the review bombing, hate, woke,
Right.
all you strip away all that stuff and you just actually look at the nuts and bolts of the show, is they did way too much. Like, the story is just all over the place. It's hard to follow, honestly.
Right.
And there's just so many. This season 1 of the Acolyte feels like like what feels like most shows, like seasons 3 or 4. I mean, you step
True.
in and it feels like you know who all these characters are and everything, and it's like, I'm just trying to learn what's going on here. So it
hmm
it feels like this is like a season 3 or 4. So if they get a season 2 and they just kind of simplified things a little bit more, then I do feel like a season 2 could be a little bit more successful.
Yeah, there are ways to, like you said, to improve upon it and get it done. I think the thing would be they'd very much want to design it in a way that has sort of a a nice little tied up ending that is pretty concrete, and then you're kind of like, okay, like this is, and then look at it and say, like, how do the critics rate it? What did the fandom say about it? If there was a lot of if there's an uptick in terms of like how it's received, go forward with the season 3, sure, whatever. But I just feel like as they go into season 2, they would have to really be thinking about how they
Yeah.
want to feed it into, I guess, the
Yeah.
prequels. So yeah,
Yeah, I think they could if they try to make it a little bit more of like, let's focus on Plagueis and the Sith side of this thing, which is what we thought the story was going to be
yeah,
in
yeah.
in the first
Well,
place. Yeah, because
it,
right now, real quick, it's you've got a story about if it were just a story about two sisters who were not even created by the Force, but just two twins who are both Force sensitive and they're born at the same time and they go in different directions. That's a cool story. I could get
right,
behind that. If
right.
it's just a story about maybe the Jedi are a little bit more corrupt in this point in time than we think they are, okay, I want
hmm
to see that. If it's just a story about a group of space witches who like we figured out a way to create life in the Force, okay, that could be kind of cool.
yeah,
But it's like all of these things crammed into 8 episodes and it's so much.
yeah. That's well put. That's really well put because it's way too much for one season, and so too many stories going, and it's why things don't feel believable. It's why the lines fall flat and the decision making by the characters does not feel believable, and the lies don't feel believable. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. Too much going on. Too much going on.
Yeah.
Now the zip through here a couple of these.
Yeah.
So number 5, just well, this one's kind of a big one. And actually, shout out to Jedi Master Andrew who wrote in, sent me a transmission, and talked a lot about this. This is questioning the morals of the Jedi that drew a lot of anger from the fans. Basically, like they're saying that's a controversy. Is that showing the Jedi in this bad of light? And this actually we can kind of jump into your conversation about one of the worst characters in this whole thing.
Ever written. Ever.
Oh my god. But in general, I think I also, I grew up liking the Jedi, being inspired by the Jedi, looking up to them. Yeah, they're flawed and there's some issues or whatever. But dude, every single Jedi in this, besides like maybe Yord and Jeki, make huge missteps and mistakes, and they lie, and they're just bad. They're not people that you can look up to. And then you're like, well, can we look to Osha? No, Osha freaking turns to the dark side by the end of this, and for for little to no reason, doesn't let Soul explain himself, force chokes him. But they all lie when they shouldn't. They're Jedi masters. And then like Venestra, who we're supposed to believe in, lies. And like Yoda is sitting there, and you're telling me like he doesn't, maybe he's going along with the lie. Like, what, Yoda, are you not informed? It just makes them look so bad. And so this article is kind of saying that maybe we think we as the fandom we're upset with that. And you know what? Actually, it's just too much. That's, as Matt kind of said before, it's too much. A little bit, maybe one lie or one character who's kind of flawed. But the fact that almost all the Jedi that we encounter in this, besides just our red shirt Jedi characters who all die, but the main characters who actually talk and that we interact with, they all make terrible decisions and they lie over and over. And you're like, this is bad. And so I think I that has been a bit controversial for me because I look up to the Jedi, and I know Obi-Wan lied and Yoda was forcing, Luke to go fight his father, knowing that was his father and stuff or whatever. But it just is different, and it's subtle, and it's not over the top. Whereas this is it just was intentionally seemed to paint the Jedi in such a bad light. And we already have that in the prequels. We already have a lot of flawed Jedi. And so we want to see how they get there. This was almost like the Jedi in this time period are worse than the Jedi in the prequel period. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't seem right. It seems like there should be a slower decline, and we're going to ramp up to some of that. But now we have Jedi that are just AWOL, that are actually just kind of crazy. So,
and I don't even think the Jedi came, like, the thing is, this whole deal was supposed to paint the Jedi in a bad light, but it's like, well, they were all like possessed by the witches coven and all this stuff. So it's like that's the things that they're being accused of weren't even their fault.
Right. And that's where
they didn't burn down the temple that killed everybody. That was the kids.
Right. That's the kids. I know. That's
You
what
know what
Soul
I mean?
says at
Like,
the end. He's like, Soul believes up into the very end that he did the right thing, but it's the believability of all of it, and it's just not it's not believable. The character I just can't get behind at all is Vernestra at all. I just think that character is
I know.
I'm just not
And I loved
into
her
that
when I
character.
first read
And
her in the book.
I know,
The like
I
that was
know.
you and I read all of the you read every of the High
Yep,
Republic launch books, and our
yep,
favorite one by far was like the like kid, like I think it was meant for like middle school. It's not like quite young
yeah,
adult, but it's the
right.
whatever it was like best book out of the
Best
whole
book,
deal.
dude.
Best Path of Courage, I think is what it was called. And we're like,
Yeah,
dude, this
yeah.
is awesome. Like reading about it, this is
Venestra's in there.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
so cool. Yeah, she's just I didn't like her at all
No,
in this show.
no. No, and I think that's also the big disconnect is it's people who read those books. It feels like did the showrunner read that book? And like I know they're probably saying, well, like this person changed from the books to now. It's like what? They don't even seem like remotely close to the same person. So I guess
Well,
it's
there's
just to set up
multiple
more
books that she's in,
backstory.
like, and she's in the
Yeah,
comics and
exactly.
all those higher. So there's quite a bit of her in the High Republic stuff, and
Right.
it doesn't feel like her at all.
Doesn't feel like her at all. No. And I got to say too, while we're on that point, anybody who is like, oh my God, you guys read the High Republic books are actually pretty good. There's some good moments in there. And I actually wish I wish the Jedi were more like that. I actually wish would have seen like them
Right.
just being duped or fooled
Well,
or
look,
outmaneuvered by the Sith and stuff. But yeah.
it was supposed to be the whole new big deal. So we're like, all
Mhm.
right, we'll check this out. So Ez and I
Right.
literally bought all the High Republic stuff. Like day one,
Right.
we read Light of the Jedi, Path of the Courage, all of those
Yep.
things. And the only one that caught my attention whatsoever, yeah, was that like
Well,
kids book. And we're like, this is
dude,
great.
remember that moment like in that book just for folks who like there's a moment by the way in this book that's so well written and it's Master Douglas and he
Master Douglas, dude.
sacrifices himself, dude. He's this slightly overweight, kind of like mid Jedi
Yeah.
master, and Venestra's the new upcoming hot shot. And it's almost like he stops Venestra and says, like, this is a master moment. Like,
Yeah.
go do your like he's like, I got this. And he knows it's his end. And the may the force be with you line. And
It's like Kanan.
in.
It's like, nope.
It's like
nope.
Kanan. It's like
Yeah.
it's exactly like Kanan, and it's like, oh my god, dude! And he's only mentioned in one book, and it's just so freaking epic. But anyway, yeah, that character. I mean, Venestra doesn't feel anything at all like that, and it just sucks. And yeah, I it's unfortunate, but I don't know. The Jedi do. I'm okay with them being slightly flawed or having some issue. It's just every single one of them. Well, let's go ahead and bring up this character. Let's go ahead and bring up the absolute freaking worst character.
The worst character ever created in all of Star Wars after watching the Acolyte is Torben.
Sucks.
What his point is the point of this character is just totally stupid, right?
Yeah.
Literally all he does is float there for years and years and years. Somehow they decided this guy should be a Jedi master. Okay.
Right.
It's like, hold on, let me get this straight for a second. Anakin Skywalker. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Winner of the Boon to Eve Classic, hero of the Clone Wars, the chosen one, took down an entire Trade Federation starship at like age 9, can't receive the rank of master, but you're going to give one to Torben, a guy who literally just floats there for like a decade.
I know.
I mean, is Jedi Master during the Acolyte era just like a participation award? It's just like, here you go. And then he just offs himself for no reason because he feels guilty for something that wasn't even his fault.
Yeah, it's just like such a little thing.
Well,
yeah, you're right. I deserve to be.
You're right.
What did he do wrong? What did he actually do wrong? So first he's like, all right, cool, let's go get them. And he rushes on ahead, right? And you're like, okay, he gets there at the door and he's like, and then Soul catches up, like, hold on, wait. And then he's like, actually, great idea, Torben. And so like you have the Jedi Master in that scenario, or Jedi Knight, whatever at the time, Soul saying, come on, let's go on in. So he's he was rash and he rushed forward to kind of, go collect this evidence that there's a vergence and then take it back. Who cares? That's enough to kill himself for. I mean, it's what he didn't actually kill anybody. Indara and like went in and like the witches were attacking the Jedi. Like, why does he feel guilty for all of that? But because he lied to the Jedi Council, freaking everybody seems like they're lying. Venestra's been lying to everybody. She's clearly lying. Yeah. She's going to tell Yoda and then not tell the rest of the order. Torben, it's so unfortunate because I like that actor a lot.
Right.
King
He
Tommen.
was
I
Tom.
mean,
Yeah, Tommen in Game of Thrones.
and and he does a sick little move with the lightsaber and stuff, but you're like, dude, this character does just suck. And it kind of goes back.
And then when she's fighting him and he's like he's just floating there, it's like the force bubble. That was like one of the most cringy things I've ever seen in Star Wars. I'm like, this looks dumb.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I don't understand. Was it just like, why couldn't it? Yeah, what did he learn there? Was he that attuned or that powerful in the force that he could do that? He's floating, he can stop that attack. I'm thinking of how useful that would have been for so many other Jedi
Well, and
down the
then the
line.
whole deal, then you come out of your force meditation, which you've been in for like a decade, and you see her, and you're just like, well, okay, I guess I'll die. So why
Yeah,
didn't you just off yourself early? If you felt so bad about it for
right.
years and years and years, then why didn't you just take yourself out earlier? Like it
Yeah.
just doesn't. It didn't make sense.
No, there's just nothing to explain it. There's no, it's sort of like, hey, we're going to show you this Padawan who made one small mistake by rushing off, and then he decided years like that was a terrible
Yeah.
decision, and these witches died, and he's gonna kill himself. Like, what's crazy is in comparison, you know, so Indara like rushes back. She once decides, hey, we're all gonna lie about this, and she still is fine. She moves on. Soul is like, I got my like he actually is the one instigating the whole thing, and he's like not in some deep meditation and wanting to off himself. Kel Naka is like, I'm not really involved in this too much, but I was taken over by the witches. I'm gonna go investigate this, and maybe go do his own thing. And this guy, the Padawan, he just doesn't seem like he had a lot of responsibility in any of this, and he's the one who actually commits suicide. It's just nuts. And it's just, again,
Yeah.
back to my thing with it just not believable. It just doesn't feel at all believable. And the Jedi just seem bad. They seem really like all of them. So that's probably the problem people have. And you can say, well, what is that? Is that a controversy? Yeah, it's a controversy. Every single character in like all the Jedi, Indara mix like lies, Soul lies. Torben rushes off for no reason, and he's making bad, we'll just call it bad decisions, right? Kellanaka, excusable. He was taking over, whatever. But all these other Jedi are just making bad decision after bad decision. And you're like, dude, I mean, all of our main characters too, like in terms of Osha and May, making bad decisions. Everyone's just making all these mistakes and bad decisions. And it doesn't feel, at the end of the day, it just is not a feel good story at all.
Yeah.
There's really nothing to get behind. So
Yeah.
anyway. Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna skip some of these. Like number 4, showrunner Leslie Headland was criticized by certain viewers.
We kind of talked
They were
about that.
yeah, fixated on her as the lead. Yeah. Some of the Acolyte's dialogue was seen as controversial, single lines, and there were moments that kind of stood out to fans. I mean, there were some things that were just again awkward and didn't feel really that great.
Yeah.
They bring up again
I
Kiadi
will.
Mundy's birthday.
I will
stuff,
actually. I will bring this one up because one of the things they say in this is when May is speaking with Soul in the ship, she tells him to go to hell, a concept that many consider to be foreign in the world of Star Wars. But let's not remember.
Yep.
In episode 1, Anakin says, "Are you an angel?" So
yeah, that's right. Well, and
you know, like
Han
yes.
Solo says, yeah, he says, I'll see you in hell. You know, so it's like it's not that.
Yeah, so I think people are. That's you got to go real deep and sweaty on that one. But yeah, that one actually I will give them credit on is that not actually is.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other one here, portrayal of the witches, Brendock proved controversial. Some dislike the inclusivity of the witches. I don't know. I mean,
I didn't have a problem actually that they were all women.
No.
Like people are like, oh, they should have all been women. No, that's kind of their whole deal. It's like a coven of witches.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's the Night Sisters are the same thing.
Same thing. No
I thought I thought the concert of Power of One was like one of the cringiest things I've ever seen, but I didn't necessarily have a problem that there was like these space witches out there doing.
And what does it mean? It's still confusing. Like the power of which one were they invested in? The power of 1, 2, or of many? I actually don't know what they were going for there. Anyway, So yeah, I didn't have an issue with that. The quality of the Acolyte's writing was not seen as good enough. And there you go, dude. That's the kind of at the center of all of this is again cramming, as Matt and I've said, too much into it, not believable, quickly paced, and when you do that, some of your dialogue and stuff in your writing does just fall flat. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. Like, I'm not somebody out there trying to rate this show as a 0. Right? A lot of people are coming out like, it's a 0, it's trash, it's not canon. No, it's just not one of the best Star Wars shows we've seen. We've seen better things, right? We've actually seen Disney create better stuff. And so we're like, all right, this kind of fell short of what we've seen other people create. Maybe season 2 will improve and it'll do better for sure. There was some great, they were kind of touting the lightsaber fights as being awesome. And I personally was like, all right, cool. Like cortosis, that's interesting. Bleeding the Kyber crystal thing, kind of cool. Like there's cool moments there that you're like, this is pretty neat. And having Chimera just be a boss and, you know, killing Jedi and going crazy.
I thought the fight between Chimera and Saul at the end was kind of cool.
Oh yeah, I thought it was sick too. I thought that was really, really good. And so I think that's where it gets a lot of points for me or whatever. But that does so much better when it's tied in with a really compelling story and about characters that we're kind of rooting for and caring about and everything. And, you know, I mean, we were kind of rooting for Saul there for a while, and then you just lost us right at the end, which is fine.
Well, there's even another character, by the way, like the Chimera being revealed as like the Sith the whole time could have been like the last episode thing. And like, no, we're going to do that like episode 3. And it's like, bro, what is that going on?
Yeah, I know.
It's like, again, like, no, we're going to cram that in there too. It's like, geez,
right.
How much are you trying to squeeze into this show?
It's a lot. So yeah, I think there's probably even more. This is just again an article that has like some, you know, 10 controversies. There's individual lines. There's things that, you know, one of the things that people were upset about, the bleeding Kyber, right? You brought this up to me, which was not that it's that big of an issue, but the idea that like, oh, and everyone's talking about it. Why doesn't Anakin have you know, a red lightsaber in Revenge of the Sith? Well, you know, somebody had a funny meme out there like, well, because Luke needed a blue one in episode 4, you know, that's that's why.
That might be funny. It, right?
That's it. Yeah. And it's like, you know, it's like that wasn't a thing back then, right? They were, you know, and it's funny because people are like, they'll try to say that's a really good point actually when you talk about legends in canon and how they'll try to say in legends, you know, the red kyber crystal was a synthetic crystal and it was you know, created and could be manufactured in a sense by the Sith, and versus this whole bleeding thing that actually happens. And it's just it's whatever. It's two different interpretations for it. And I guess when you muddy those waters, then you get inconsistencies like you get in Revenge of the Sith, which, you know, whatever, not that big of a deal, but it is going to irk some people. And that's the whole point. You know, you're trying to create this bigger world that needs to kind of fit together. And yeah, when there's inconsistencies or things just it just seems odd. It takes you out of it a little bit, I think. And yeah, so but in general, I don't know, man. For me overall, I have it at like a 5, teetering on a 4 in terms of just the overall. Yeah,
that's,
10.
That's where I'm at. I like to do out of 5 stars, and I would go 2 out of 5 stars.
2 out of 5, yeah, okay. And it's just, I don't know. I was again rooting for it. I think there's some really cool stuff in it, but it's also just not. It just kind of fell flat. And I personally would like to see them do a season 2 and actually just come back and knock it out of the park and do it and get it done in one season and tell your story with Plagueis and just get it done and improve upon it. That would be great. And if it's that, and if it is good and if there's room to do a season 3, cool beans. Actually, I'm always in favor of more Star Wars. I just want good, high quality Star Wars. So I keep hoping that Disney is going to see that, because Bob Iger came out not too long ago and said, we need to just tell good stories. We need to remember that we're an entertainment company and we need to make money and we need to do, you know, these things and just focus on that. And that will drive everything else. In Andor, we didn't care that there were, you know, 2 female characters in a relationship or whatever. We didn't care that you know, like the diversity in that show.
Andor had some slow, I mean, because I remember covering it every week, being like, "Wow, I don't know, man, this show might suck." Slow. And then it took like the first 5 episodes are pretty painfully slow. Right. I mean, it's pretty, it's like really stretched out there until you get that first big moment with the eye and everything, and that was cool. And then once they got to the prison, it was like, okay. I mean, Andor could have been like, there's like 3 seasons in that show. Yeah, really, you know, like it was right, 3 totally different things.
Right. True. That's right. Yeah, they were doing those arcs or whatever. Yeah, and again. Like the criticisms weren't, there just wasn't, you didn't have to, I don't know, it's actually right dead between episodes 3 and 4, right? So it actually has to fit inside of this other greater story, and it fit in perfectly, it fit in really well. The pacing, as we said, you know, as Matt was just saying there, it was slow, but the Acolyte, it's far enough away. I think I heard Star Wars Theory say this the other day. He was like, it should have been further back. If you want to do this kind of controversial stuff and you want to it should have been further away from episode 1 because it just feels too close to it, and it feels like it's impacting in a lot of ways that don't jive and are not really consistent with canon. So it seems to be one of the issues. But
yeah.
okay, another thing before we go, one of the things I think we wanted to talk about was video game. Matt, this
Oh
is
yeah, man. Star Wars
just,
Outlaws. Yeah, let me just can I just take
go,
a
dude. Yes,
second here to rant about this? Okay.
please do.
So here we go again with Ubisoft, right? You know, you look at the Star Wars Outlaws footage, and I mean, first of all, we already know that there's a big pricing controversy with Star Wars Outlaws, right? In that, hey, they're charging the full premium thing, full premium price. You just pay over like $115, well over $100, I should say, if you want to play the game and get the extra Jabba the Hutt mission. Which, if you're going to make a game that the whole point is to be involved in the criminal underworld, why are you going to have a Jabba the Hutt mission hidden behind a paywall? I mean, that just I've talked at length about that on my TikTok and stuff, and that is just in its own right. But a couple days ago, we saw some more gameplay footage of Star Wars Outlaws, and people began to really notice some graphical issues with the game, especially when compared to the first trailer we saw, I believe was at Game Awards or Summer Games Fest last year, you know, one of those big shows. And now people are watching it being like, hey, this does not look like the same game, which does happen with other companies, right? Like sometimes you show the game and then you say, hey, this is may not be how it looks. But if it were any company other than Ubisoft, I'd be willing to buy into it. But we've been down this road with them many times before. I think the most infamous is with Watch Dogs. Was supposed to be like the first big next gen game coming out on Xbox One and PlayStation 4 at the time. And everybody remembers that trailer from E3 and like, oh my God, this game looks gorgeous. And then the game came out and everyone's like, this does not look like what we saw at the trailer. Well, it's often because when they're developing the game, it's being running on maxed out computers and everything. And then they show you the footage to get you hyped for it. And then often later they say, hey, you know, this is what the game actually looks a little bit more like running on now. Like, you know, back then it would be PlayStation 4. Now it's PlayStation 5. Here's what it looks like. But man, people are looking at the game now and they're like, I don't know that this game should be releasing this year because there are moments where it's stuttering. There's moments where the particle effects don't look nearly as good. I mean, there are moments where in some cases it looks like a PS3 game. And it's like, bro, what is happening with this game?
Yeah. Dude, that's unfortunate because it's like it does seem like you know, we want to experience the underworld and go on bounties and collect, you know, do the various things and get to know the crime syndicates more. But I was watching a breakdown too where they talked about just some of the mechanics or the different things, the radius of explosions and how they don't affect certain characters, and that should have alerted this character, and it also then, you know, it just certain things were not they didn't match the original trailer that came out, and it just doesn't it's not looking as spectacular. And also I also heard somebody say that the mission that they show on Tatooine is one of the most boring like planets and like it was not a very good choice in terms of like what they were trying to show off, which is concerning because it's Tatooine. There's not a whole lot to really, you know, you don't have to go super crazy. It's this desert world, and you could have everything needed to look spectacular in that versus you could get maybe away with a little bit more if you were on you know, where there's a lot more detail in terms of the graphics or the city or the background. And I don't know, kind of seems like it's falling flat.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, and the most disappointing thing about this is that we've been waiting for like a decade, or I don't know how exactly, ever since Disney bought Star Wars, for EA to lose that exclusive license that they've had forever over making Star Wars games. And ironically, actually, is the last 2 Star Wars games EA made were pretty good.
Yeah.
And now somebody else has it, and we're like, well, this is not as good as we'd hoped, right? I mean, well, there was also that Star Wars Hunters game, which came out on Switch, and mobile, and it's not very good. But you know, we had to suffer through the Battlefront controversy, right? With like hiding people behind a paywall. Then they doubled down on it on Battlefront 2, and then after the fans pushing back, we finally got something. We had Squadrons, which was like really boring and got old really fast. But then we got Jedi Survivor and Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, which are fantastic. It's like, all right, well, maybe EA's onto something. Right. Then, you know, Disney pulls the rug out from EA and says, all right, well, we're going to let other people in here too. And they give it to Ubisoft, who makes Assassin's Creed and you know,
Yeah,
a lot of
yeah.
open world games that we're hoping for, and the first one we see is like, well, this
Right.
is not very good.
It's not looking that great. Do they make, I mean, because I don't really know a whole lot about it, but like, will they make improvements, or is that like kind
Oh,
of
for sure.
like, okay, so
Yeah,
as we get
yeah,
closer, because
I'm
August
sure.
30th, I think is
I'm sure, but Ubisoft specifically is having just a really, really bad year in the video game. I don't know what has just happened with like Ubisoft. They have just really gone. I mean, they're like almost worse than EA now. I mean, just a lot of like
dang.
the way they price things. They the like CEO came out earlier this year and said people need to get comfortable not owning their games as we
Yeah.
move toward more
Oh,
digital
yeah, I remember
things.
that. Right.
Yeah, and like, oh, like what they really want is games to be on a live service, like a Netflix type thing, that then you lose access to it, and like you know, like, and so then they're jacking up the price on Star Wars Outlaws to be like, all right, you're really going to need to buy the ultimate premium, a day one edition, in order to get all of the content that just should be in the game. I mean, normally a lot of that stuff is like, hey, you get like extra items and you get to play the game earlier, maybe you get like some cool cosmetic things, and it's literally like, yeah, you get like an extra coat and you get a Jabba the Hutt mission, and you need to pay like an extra
Yeah.
$40 for it. So it's just, I mean, there's other stuff too that Ubisoft has been doing this year, like this game, The Crew, which is an online game, but like you're even removing it from your library, like you don't even have it anymore. They're like,
Wow.
yeah, so like even though the servers for the game are going offline, and other platforms like Steam and stuff like that, you still own the game. So even if the server goes offline, a lot of times, you know, the gamers over the years will make their own servers for it. Like that's how Battlefront 2
Yeah.
actually
Right.
existed forever. Was
Right.
that people did it, and now Disney's actually done the right thing and they turned the Battlefront 2 servers back on. Like,
Yeah.
so it's just it just sucks. And honestly,
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I wish EA was making this game instead of Ubisoft.
That's crazy.
That's
Crazy.
crazy. I know it's crazy to say, but I feel
Yeah.
like Outlaws would be better off made by EA than, I think Ubisoft has taken the reins of being the worst video game company from EA. So I think I'd rather EA make it. No, I'd much rather like, you know, somebody else make it, like From
Oh, for sure.
Software or Bandai Namco or any of this, like Rockstar, any of those people would make a way better Star Wars game than both of those companies. But I don't
Yeah.
know, man.
Dude,
I almost feel like I'd rather have EA make it.
that's wild. That's wild. That's a strong statement, dude. I mean, so back in, I think it was like right before the end of the school year, there I had students coming in talking about this game and what was I going to play it. It's coming out, you know, in August or whatever, and they're like, we you know, our parents won't let us get it. It's too expensive. It's too
I know.
expensive. They were looking at the price, and because all that information was coming out, and it was right at the end of the school year, they were like, nah, we probably won't be able to play it. And I'm like, that is ridiculous. These are like high school students that I work with who are like, and I mean, I work in a pretty well off district, and they were like, it's going to be a lot of convincing to kind of maybe get this game. I'm like, what, dude? Like that's
Yeah.
unfortunate.
So
Big
yeah,
time.
So it's $130 for the premium bundle,
Wow.
which, you know, includes a season pass of content, you know, which DLC in its own right is its own thing. You also get the Rogue Infiltrator bundle, the Sabak Shark bundle, and the pre-order bonus, which is a Jabba the Hutt mission. It's like, why are you making a game about the criminal underworld if you can't, if a Jabba the Hutt mission is behind a paywall? And they even came out and said too, they were like, well, Jabba people will be able to interact with Jabba. You just won't be able to do a Jabba mission. It's like, I thought the whole point of the game
What?
was to be in the criminal underworld. That is Jabba.
See, yeah, that kind of stuff is shady to me, because you take the character that you're like, people really going into that game, like you said, the expectation is, oh man, it's gonna be sick. I'm gonna get this game because we get to kind of run jobs for Jabba. That would be freaking awesome. Well, hey, you're gonna have to pay extra for that. What, dude?
I know.
Well,
I know.
I mean, I'm already paying to get a game that I think I can do that very thing in, and you're saying I can't. That's
Right.
I don't know. Well, I mean, dude, that's wild. Yeah, we'll see. So that's August 30th coming out, and you know,
Yeah.
I'll still probably grab it and check it out, and then I don't know if if it'll stick or not. But
Right.
like some of the things looked kind of, you know, neat about it. There were some cool moments for it, but it just like the graphics and stuff, it did feel a little, you know, the quality wasn't as great as what we saw with the trailer. So
Yeah.
anywho, All right, man. I think that's it. We talked about the Acolyte. There are other things coming up in Star Wars, which we'll come back. Maybe we'll have Matt back and talk about season 2. We'll talk about other updates because there's stuff coming out in terms of that game, in terms of something coming out. What is it? Jude Law and those the poster was released for
Skeleton
those kids.
Crew.
Skeleton Crew. There you go. That's coming out in around December, I guess. Is that? I don't even. I have to check. I just saw a leaked poster.
I'd have to look, but I do know it's supposed to be coming. Yeah, and I do believe they started shooting Mando.
Oh yeah, Mando. Yeah, which is gonna be cool. Yeah, there's just dude. Last kind of thing here on the Acolyte. They just need to slow down and make some good freaking stories, dude. Make some good movies and just really. I really am hoping because season 3 of the Mandalorian
and actually make the movies too.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't tell us there's going to be a Lando movie and a Rogue Squadron movie, and
dude, they
keep announcing things. They're like, hey, we're going to make a Rey movie. Hey, we're going to make Dan and Dave from Game of Thrones are going to get a trilogy. Rian Johnson. We haven't seen a single one of those things.
No. It's literally become the galaxy of empty promises, and that sucks. Because I was actually kind of excited, like especially now seeing the Acolyte. People are like, oh, looking up on the sequels a little bit. But I was thinking, go ahead and improve the character of Rey because Daisy Ridley deserved better. John Boyega deserved better. Those actors go make that. Now they're like, hey, we're actually going to hold off on it.
And I don't even think John Boyega said he wants nothing to do with it. Adam Driver has also said he doesn't want to do anything with Star Wars. So it's like,
right,
if you're not going to go down a path of like something Kylo Ren being saved by Rey somehow through the Force, or Finn's not even in it. I know. And then the other problem is that you've had Finn in all of the Lego stuff, which just is its own thing. But all of that stuff is like supposed to be post episode 9, and it's all like Rey training Finn.
Right. I know.
So it's like, so what's that? So just that feels weird too. Now
it ain't gonna work if they're not in. There's no story there. It's just gonna feel. And they're like, well, there's a time jump. Well, okay, so maybe you're gonna tell it in movies or comics, or what are they gonna kill Finn off? In those 15 years, it's just weird. So I actually, I have to check myself though. I actually do. If it's not good, don't freaking make it. But also, don't say anything about it. Just quit kind of getting those headlines and stuff and just go ahead and make the show, because I actually don't want them to rush a Rey show or Rey movie series or anything. Just actually make something in secret and come out and make
conversation for another time. But Ez and I have talked about it a long time. Rey was not the problem with the sequels.
No, dude.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
I was watching the other day, The Force Awakens. I was like, all right, cool beans. And I got to The Last Jedi, and we tried years ago. I think it was 2017, whenever that was. Dude, I actually came out with in defense of The Last Jedi, trying to defend it. And I just thought, man, this thing's, I can't defend. I can't actually. I wanted to kind of be, people will call me a shill just because I mentioned the word Acolyte, but it's like, dude, actually tried to be one there and couldn't. Really just could not do it. So it's bad. But anyway, we're gonna hope for better. Andor season 2 looks like it's like whenever that that stuff we have good things that I think to look forward to and stuff. But we'll just kind of wait and see, and I don't know, we'll just have to rinse our mouth of the taste of Acolyte for a little bit, because I honestly just can't. It's a 5, and it's the first time I've ever said anything is like a 5 for me in Star Wars. So that's a big deal. But hey, thanks to Sir Matt. Appreciate you, dude, honestly. And we'll have you back on for some more thoughts and theories as we have some more Star Wars news and whatnot. And friends, we'll be actually, I think maybe possibly back over on Bend the Knee talking about House of the Dragon. Matt, where can people find you on the internet?
Anywhere on the internet at Super Gainsbros. And then, of course, also over at Bend the Knee podcast.
Yep. Having a great time over there. I tell you what, that's the kind of excitement I want to get back, and I want to cover stuff like that, dude. It's like, God dang it. So this show's got me all messed up. But anyways, that'll be fun, guys. Definitely go check that out. There's some good stuff over there. We did this. Anybody who has listened to Matt and I back in the day, we did this epic Patreon episode over there. That is just baller. It's tinfoil hat, spoiler. It's all the stuff, all the things you want. Game of Thrones tied into House of the Dragon. It's great stuff. So if you're looking for some good entertainment, some good podcasts, go check that out. And all right. Thanks again to Matt and friends. We will be back. Remember, as always, may the Force be with you.